Hey, Lizard King joined us today. What's going on? Good to see you. We're getting our thing set up right now, and we'll jump into a live stream. We got 4 people on the line. That's what we like to see. Up to 5. As you guys are coming in, go ahead and hit that like button for us. Helps out with our analytics. We definitely appreciate that as we are about to start preparing this live stream for you guys. Hit that like button. We always like to hit double digits, or usually our goal is to hit double digits. And as always, I'll reiterate it a couple times, the super chat is available for any contributions you'd like to make to the Gridiron Expert. We definitely appreciate those. They definitely help out our channel a whole lot. So we would definitely appreciate it. Every little bit helps. We have a couple contributions over the past couple live streams, and they're definitely appreciated and mean a lot for us and all the YouTubers out there. So we got Lizard King on the line. We got GB already asking a question about Texas. Got 5 people here, and I want to apologize. I know we didn't get a tweet out there about when this live stream was coming. This was kind of a spur of the moment type deal. It's been a very, very hectic weekend, as it usually is, as to be expected. But we just got back from a little trip and decided to, as soon as we walked into the door, decided to sit down and shoot a live stream for you guys. I know this one's going to be a little bit short, probably looking about 45 minutes or so. So I once again apologize for not getting an alert out there for you guys. I know, like I said, very spur of the moment. But glad you were able to join us on this Sunday afternoon. Hope you guys are rested. I know we lost an hour of sleep last night. All that daylight savings, if your state does daylight savings. But we're ready to sit down and talk some college football. And any questions you guys want answered, or any comments that you want to discuss. MCD Sports 4, good to see you. Glad you're able to join us. Richard Neal and Brody L. Always glad to see you guys as well. Glad you were able to join the chat tonight. So I already got a couple comments here about Texas. What do I think about Texas? And Brody saying Texas is back. Comic Dude 45, nice to see you in here. Always glad to have you. Lizard King, we're doing team predictions in the summer, man. That's when we always hit up our predictions. We sit down, do those June, July, probably. Or it's going to happen in June, I can assure you of that. Like I said, we're going to have an official date coming out probably here in the next month or two. We'll put out on Twitter and here on YouTube. We will announce the official date for when team predictions will start. I know you guys are going to do that. And I'm going to do a little something different this year. I'm not going to tell you what quite yet. You're going to want to stay tuned, but we're switching up the format a little bit. So and it's going to require you guys. It's going to require some help from you guys, the viewers and the fans, that are going to kind of run these predictions this year. Not making the predictions, of course, but helping us out with these predictions. So make sure you stay tuned for that and any updated news we have coming on. We got 9 people on the stream, 3 likes. Hit that like button as you're coming in. Good to see you. We got a couple people in the chat. GB asking me earlier what I thought about Texas. Brody L saying that Texas is back. I agree that Texas is going in the right direction, without a doubt. Tom Herman bringing back a lot of talent this year, making a Big 12 championship appearance in just year 2. Winning the Sugar Bowl in just year 2, certainly looking like Big 12 title contenders once again. Potentially, some people have them as potential dark horse for the playoff. I wouldn't go that far yet, but he's got them on the right track, and Texas is back to where they should be. Texas is fun for football when Texas A&M Texas is good. When Texas is good. I know some people might not like to hear that, but Texas is one of those just dominant powerhouses, most historic college football teams, one of them. That's always good to see them succeed. Texas A&M, Brody L. making a point that Texas A&M is coming up. They absolutely are. Jimbo Fisher is getting them to a point where they're going to start competing in the SEC West. And I really wish personally that Texas and Texas A&M would renew their rivalry and start playing again. I would love more than anything to see them in a like a Sugar Bowl setting. You know, you send Texas A&M to the Sugar Bowl, have them face off against like Texas. I mean, that'd be all, or any bowl game. That would be awesome. But Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher's got them in the right direction. Very, very tough schedule, though, for the Aggies. LSU on the road, I believe. Clemson. I think they have to go to Georgia. The only people they get to the host is Alabama. And sometimes that doesn't even do you any good. So, but Jimbo Fisher, you know, how many games will they win out of those 4, do y'all think? I mean, you got at LSU, at Georgia, home against Alabama, at Clemson. That's a tough slate. Like I said, I'm not one to make predictions now, but that's That's a heck of a slate for an A&M team that's moving in the right direction, but 3 of those 4 teams on the road. And the one team you get to host is Alabama and Tua Tagovailoa, who some people might think is going to take a step back this year. I don't think so. We got one guy that says 0, that they're going to win 0 of those games. So he's automatically giving them 4 losses. The best A&M could do is 8-4. And the odds of them winning their 8 other games, I'm sure they'd slip up somewhere. So 7-5. That would be disappointing. I think 8-4. What did A&M win this year? 9 games? So they definitely need to get back to that point. 8-4, win your bowl game, 9 games or more would be a successful year, I think, especially with the schedule that Jimbo Fisher is having to deal with this year. Those cross-division games hurt. I mean, you got one cross-division game against Georgia and a non-conference game against Clemson. Those can kill you sometimes. But you pull one off, it's a heck of a resume. GB, did I think Alabama was going to get blown out? No, I don't think anybody thought Alabama was going to get blown out. Some people may have thought Alabama was going to lose. No one saw, what was it, 44-16? No one. I don't think any of the experts out there saw Alabama getting blown out. Some may have chosen Clemson. Maybe by 7, maybe by 10, however many. But no one saw Alabama getting beat the way they did. No, we have not seen Alabama get that manhandled by a team really in the Nick Saban era. I know he struggled in his first year there. But since Alabama started becoming relevant again, 2008, 2009, we have not seen them get beat that bad and just look so hopeless ever. Heck of a win by Dabo Swinney and Clemson. I don't think it'll happen again, though. Despite Alabama losing so much talent, despite Alabama losing so many assistant coaches, I think they're going to be fine. They're still going to be the king of the SEC, although Georgia is closing that gap. LSU is becoming relevant again, absolutely. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Comic Dude, 2019 championship game was like porn for Alabama haters. The SEC, Brody says, is coming back to what it used to be. Had a couple of down years, in his opinion. Yeah, I mean, people. We talked about this in the last live stream about whether or not, you have the SEC conference or the Southeastern Conference, and like Alabama is the king. So when Alabama does well, can you really say though that SEC is the best conference? Because there were really no other teams, and then you had a handful. Auburn made a couple runs. LSU, Georgia is now relevant again, but for a while there, it was just Alabama and then everybody else. But now people are picking it back up. So I agree that now you have a much more competitive conference. Florida's getting better. Georgia's competitive. Alabama, LSU, A&M's on its way back up. Auburn has a couple down years here and there, but is usually trending in the right direction. Kentucky made a run this year. I mean, so you've got teams that are making it known that it's not just Alabama's conference anymore in terms of how they're going to be perceived nationally. There are a bunch of other SEC teams, and we saw that in bowl season for the most part. I mean, LSU winning their bowl game. Alabama made the national championship, made the playoff. Of course, didn't win it all, but still got there. Georgia, yes, lost the Sugar Bowl. Kentucky, though, beating Penn State. I mean, we had multiple bowl teams in the SEC. Maybe they didn't fare exactly well, but I think they did fairly decent, about 500. One thing I do want to address here, a little off the topic of football, we can get back on there. Of course, these live streams are run by you guys, or run by the chat and the questions and the comments that you guys provide, and we appreciate that. But I'm sure if you follow all sports like I do, you're probably all aware of Will Wade, the LSU men's basketball coach, and his suspension for some recruiting violations that they have absolute clear-cut evidence that he did do these things. I want to get y'all's take on that, and here's my view. LSU suspended Will Wade indefinitely because of these allegations. Of course, they're going to do a full-fledged interview, but you look at LSU, and look, I hate to be prejudiced or anything, but I just had a suspicion. After the success LSU was having, and that's not taking anything away from them, but that Will Wade, it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem right. That he was doing something just was a little shady, and sure enough, it was right. FBI wiretapped the cell phones. He's recruiting these players in a method that is not legal. We've seen this happen in basketball many times before. We know plenty of players have and are getting paid illegally, against the rules. We've seen that happen. We've seen that happen in football. What's it going to take to stop this? Because really, what are the repercussions for this? It's for Will Wade, that is embarrassing. It's shameful, maybe. I don't know. Look, LSU's number 10 in the nation. They got the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. They're going to be at least a 3 or 4 seed, maybe higher, in the NCAA tournament. if they go on a Final Four run or win a national championship or something, maybe they vacate that in a couple of years if they have to. But those players that were getting paid are still getting to play basketball for the most part. They will maybe go pro and make millions of dollars, so it's not going to matter. They're not going to go get in big trouble or anything. Will Wade is really the only repercussions are LSU is going to have to maybe get rid of their coach that was doing so well for them, but he was doing so well for them because he was not doing things in the right way, and they might have to vacate some wins. But for the fans, extremely enjoyable. Emperor of Rome, good to see you. Glad you were able to join us. For the fans, still enjoyable to watch your team go on a run. Fans will still always say that, oh yeah, we had to vacate a win, but we still won. Like just because we recruited this guy illegally, your team still couldn't beat us. It's just one of those things where I just, for me, nothing's going to change. We've seen so many scandals like this happen. I firmly believe like John Calipari at Kentucky is probably doing some things like that. We saw that wasn't necessarily recruiting, but it's a big time scandal at Louisville. They did have to vacate their 2013 national championship. We've got the scandal here at LSU. We've got scandals in college football, but nothing is going to happen to change these things because there's no repercussions for it. There's got to be a way to shut this down. Some people will say, well, maybe we should just pay athletes. We've had this conversation many times before on this channel about whether or not to pay athletes in both football and basketball on lines. And I think we all agreed for the most part that we should not pay college athletes. They're getting a pretty good sum of money from scholarships to go play football, basketball, baseball, whatever their sport is. I just think that I think a problem needs to be changed. I think this problem needs to be changed. I just don't think there's any way to do that, and no one's taking actions to do that. I just think it's a bad scandal. It's bad for the game of basketball. I think it's bad for the game of football because another thing is you look at the teams that these guys are beating. So if LSU were to go on a run in the NCAA tournament, say all the way to the Final Four, every single team that they beat along the way should never have lost them in the first place. Per se. I know that one player that you recruit illegally doesn't make up an entire team, but that plays a huge role. LSU shouldn't even be able to go there, period. And I know it's frustrating too because you look at some players that were not recruited wrongly. You look at the players that did pour their heart and soul into this program. I'm not saying the people that were recruited legally didn't, but you look at the people that did and they're getting punished. The fan base is getting punished, but it's just not right. You just do things right. That's what just. The one thing I've always learned is that the truth will always come out. So if you believe that you are going to be able to sneak away with whatever it is for cheating scandals or doing something wrong, it will always come out. The same way in life and the way in sports as well. So it's a lesson to be learned for Will Wade and the LSU Tigers. What will happen is yet to be seen. He was suspended for the final game of the regular season against Vanderbilt. He will probably remain suspended, and he's remained indefinitely, probably for the SEC tournament. I would assume for the NCAA tournament as well. I don't think he should be able to coach in that. So it is a shame. It's kind of a disgrace. It's bad for the game of basketball. When this stuff happens in football, it is bad in football as well. I think it's a shame, and unfortunately, nothing is being done to fix that. Richard Neal, the FBI, and NCAA are going to investigate other LSU athletic programs. I would assume they would. I mean, usually when they launch a full-fledged investigation like this, they go all the way. They check every aspect there. I mean, if you're there, why not keep looking? So yeah, they probably will look into football. I wouldn't suspect Ed Orgeron or any allegations in the football program. I don't think anything there, but. Yeah, I mean, they will definitely look into that. And they launched a full-fledged investigation. What was it, last March? I mean, last year we dove into that. We saw guys like, I think it was Colin Sexton, some guys at Michigan State. I mean, some of the big-time colleges that were getting caught in some scandals. And once again, nothing has been done. Because you can't have college basketball where a team like Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, Gonzaga. And I'm not saying these guys, like Gonzaga, for example, has done anything wrong, but those type of schools, it is bad for the game of basketball if they do not succeed. And that is the unfortunate world that we live in. Now, I'm not saying that they were given what the success, but they got to watch their punishments because they punished all of those powerhouses and said, okay, no, you have a postseason ban. You imagine an NCAA tournament where you didn't have a Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, Michigan, Gonzaga, guys like that, your classical powerhouses. It would be bad for ratings. It would be bad for everybody. It would be the right thing to do if they did cheat, but they won't let that happen. And that is a shame in and of itself. Same way with player suspensions as well. You look at team players do something wrong, get arrested, violate team rules, they might get suspended by their head coaches, but what do they get suspended for? A quarter, a half, a series, or a game in which they know that they're going to win, such as a season opener against an FCS opponent or a Sun Belt school, a game where they know, okay, we can leave you out here, but next week when we have our conference opener or our biggest game of the year, or whatever it is, you will be playing. We certainly would suspend you for a big game. We'll suspend you for that. Or if we do have to suspend you to make it look like we're doing something, we'll suspend you for a very short amount of time, such as a series or a half. Or until we realize, oh crap, we're in trouble and we need to stick you in. That's an unfortunate thing to do. You can't compromise morals and you can't compromise the rules for success. And unfortunately, we see that a lot in college football and college basketball. Across the board. Individually as well as a group. GB, were we talking about basketball on the football channel? Yeah, we were. Look, I told you, this is a die-hard football channel. Always has been, always will be. But this was just something that has been on my mind. Obviously, big news coming out of the LSU athletic program. We are approaching March Madness, of course. Selection Sunday is a week from today. We will know the field of 64 or field of 68 with those playing games. So I thought we would address that. That's a pretty big deal. But 9 times out of 10, actually, I would say, almost pretty much 10 out of 10, we're going to be talking football all the time. We do have a couple of basketball segments on here, though, periodically. Yeah, Prince 6'1", we're waiting on him. Comic Dude 45 making a comment there. He'll probably jump on here in a little bit. I did mention at the beginning, guys, that this will be a shorter live stream. I know I've said that in the past, but it certainly will be today. Probably looking about 30, 45 minutes. But I did want to jump on. As I said, I just got back from a trip, and as soon as I got back here into the dorm, I wanted to jump on with you guys and visit for a little bit, see what kind of discussion we could get going. Of course, we'll be back in action on Tuesday, per usual, as well as Thursday. Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday is the prime time for these live streams at the Gridiron Expert. And as always, the Super Chat is available for contributions to this channel. Anything that you guys would like to contribute and help us out with is really appreciated and certainly goes a long way for us. Emperor of Rome, great question. Obviously, big news breaking last night. Antonio Brown, big-time Steelers wide receivers, arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL, getting traded to the Oakland Raiders. And that was actually a prediction that I made. I do a show here at Arkansas State, a sports talk show, and that was one that I called. I predicted that Antonio Brown would go out to Oakland. That just seemed like the type of move that John Gruden would make and arrange. And unfortunately for the Steelers, they were on the wrong end of that deal. Now, if you follow this news, I mean, the Steelers, gave away, they gained a 3rd round and a 5th round draft pick, I think. So 2 draft picks for Antonio Brown, as I mentioned, one of the best wide receivers in the game. DM, good to see you. Glad you were waiting for this live stream. Can't wait to see what you have to contribute. Anything you guys have to say, but I'm glad you were able to join us. But, Antonio Brown, you pair him up with Derek Carr, and I will say this, Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback. He was getting a lot of hate. They were like, imagine going from Ben Roethlisberger, who, yes, is better than Derek Carr, but imagine going from Ben Roethlisberger to Derek Carr. It's not that bad, guys. I mean, Derek Carr is a good quarterback in a right system. The Raiders might really struggle this year under John Gruden. Had a lot of pieces to figure out. Obviously got rid of Khalil Mack. That was a big-time trade. Gruden's crazy, man, but he's got a plan, and I do certainly believe that. I think that's a great trade for the Raiders. A big piece for the Raiders, who just got rid of Amari Cooper to the Cowboys. They needed a big-time wide receiver. That's huge for them. Of course, we know the Steelers weren't going to give away Antonio Brown to any AFC North opponent, so the Ravens, the Bengals, or the Browns. And, of course, weren't going to give them to the New England Patriots, because imagine if you paired Antonio Brown up with Tom Brady. So out in out in Oakland, soon to be Las Vegas for the Raiders. Steelers will rarely have to play them, only periodically. I think it's a good trade. For the Raiders. The Steelers, they're like, well, why didn't the Steelers get anybody better? Well, the Steelers were just good to get rid of Antonio Brown, because you get rid of him, you get drama off the team. And if I was a coach, I don't have any tolerance for drama. You come here to play the game of football, and if you don't like it, you're going to get out. Bill Belichick adapted that method, and it has worked great for him. If you come to me asking me for more money, if you deserve it, we'll talk about it. But don't sit here and complain. Come here, do your job. That's what you're come here to do. You've come to play football, play for our organization. If you're going to complain about it, then get out. And I think that's a great way to operate. Because you shouldn't have to have this drama. These are grown men here playing a game of football, getting paid millions of dollars. I know Antonio Brown was not necessarily happy with the situation. And if you're not happy, yeah, you can ask for a trade. But, and he shouldn't necessarily be forced to stay there. But stop complaining about it and just leave. And the Steelers got rid of him, traded him to Oakland. And I think they were just trying to find any way to get rid of him without giving him to a rival. And the Raiders, not necessarily a rival per se. So, good trade. Lasted longer than that Bills trade that recently allegedly came out earlier in the week saying that he was going to be traded to Buffalo. Didn't last very long, so big-time trade for the Raiders. It's going to be interesting to see him out there in the AFC West. A lot of firepower. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. Now you got AB out there hooking up with Derek Carr and John Gruden, who I think will get the Raiders to a decent standing in 2019. Maybe not playoff bound, but he's going to show major signs of improvement there. And the Raiders were competitive at times last year, just wasn't quite where it needed to be. So I do have a lot of faith in John Gruden out there in Oakland. DM, did Carson Wentz put North Dakota State on the map, or did North Dakota State stand alone regardless? Also, thoughts on Easton Stick and the NFL draft? Well, your first question regarding Carson Wentz putting North Dakota State on the map, what I will say, and as I respond to this message, I can try to multitask here. What I will say about that is no, he didn't put him on the map, but he certainly helped. I mean, you look at what Carson Wentz did at North Dakota State, nothing short of amazing. What he's done in the NFL, nothing short of amazing, even though it's a very young career, and yes, he has battled injuries. I sit here and I think about it. Kleiman, their coach, the head coach, and now head coach at Kansas State, did a phenomenal job with the Bison there. But he was doing those great things without Carson Wentz to begin with. He certainly helped them out. Every program has got, certainly the FCS. I can think of two major programs that have had big-time players come out of them and have exceptional careers in the NFL. That's Eastern Illinois, and that is North Dakota State. Eastern Illinois, of course, Tony Romo, Jimmy Garoppolo, Sean Payton. North Dakota State, handful there just because of their success. Carson Wentz as well. Now, Easton Stick, I know what you're saying. I guess DM, man, you're a North Dakota State fan, so we got an FCS fan on the Gridiron Expert, I'm guessing, and I think that's pretty awesome. That we mostly focus on FBS and Power 5, but look, football is football, and so I'm glad you're able to contribute if you're a big fan. But Easton Stick, of course, if you guys don't know, the blowing my phone up here or my laptop up here, quarterback for the North Dakota State Bison, entering the NFL draft this season. Is he like like the next Carson Wentz? I mean, he played well with North Dakota State, absolutely, but he's certainly not one of the top ranked quarterback prospects. Wentz coming out of college was. I mean, Wentz coming out, he was projected to be a first-round draft pick, top 2. Well, I think he was drafted second overall, right, by the Eagles. So, I mean, he was a high draft pick. Stick, not projected to necessarily do that. Did participate at the Combine, did fairly well. I would expect him to be, I would think, somewhere 4th, 5th round, potentially. That's just my opinion. There's so many other quarterbacks ahead of him right now. You got Dwayne Haskins, you've got your Drew Locks, you got your Ryan Finleys. I mean, you've got a pretty good handful of players there that are going to be ahead of him in this NFL draft. But I would suspect very late NFL draft for him to get drafted. If not, you got free agency. You see a lot of players that do have some talent, but these guys don't want to waste a draft pick on them, and they get picked up in free agency and try to make them maybe sign to a practice squad and move themselves up from there. So. That's pretty cool, man. I didn't know you were a North Dakota State fan. That's pretty sweet. Or maybe you just follow the Bison pretty closely. Maybe you live up there. I don't know, but I appreciate that. It's always good to expand our horizons a little bit and talk a little bit on the FCS. Emperor of Rome taking care of business with Nona Bees. Yeah, we're not really looking for those type of comments here. But sure there are a couple of websites if you're looking to find that type of stuff. Ren Bear, I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly. Do you think if Notre Dame goes 11-1 or even undefeated, we can't make the playoff because of our recent history in big games? Our schedule is very tough with games at Georgia and Michigan, also on the road. No, Notre Dame, man, I think for Notre Dame to get to the playoff, unfortunately, I think they will have to go undefeated. 11-1 does not benefit them as it would a Power 5 school because of that no conference championship game. Notre Dame, as an independent, they play 12 games. And one lone loss at Michigan or at Georgia, it's not a bad loss, assuming those teams do play well, which I would expect good things out of Michigan and Georgia both this year. But they have to go undefeated. The committee will not hold out a team based on their history. They will not say, oh, we can't put Notre Dame in there because if you saw what happened in the Cotton Bowl last year, we don't want a repeat of that. The committee's goal is to put the 4 most deserving teams in the playoff. And if they feel that Notre Dame is most deserving because of the way they have played, look, 2019 is a whole new year. The past is the past. You can't fix that, but that doesn't mean that the past is going to repeat itself. Notre Dame has struggled in those big games, but the committee should not, I do think they are biased at times, but should not hold any bias towards Notre Dame in terms of their history in big games. If they go undefeated and they feel like they're deserving, they will make the college football playoff, especially if they win at Georgia and Michigan, both. No doubt in my mind, if they go undefeated, they will be in there. If they split that series, beating one or the other, I think a Georgia win would be more impressive, personally, at Georgia in Athens. Then one loss to Michigan would not be that bad. So it's possible, but I think I would still probably put in a one-loss Power 5 champion, depending on who that one loss is to and who they beat in their conference championship, over an 11-1 Notre Dame. But no, there would be no biasness there, and they would not hold them out because of their struggles in the past. Okay, so DM lives in New York State. He loves North Dakota State because Game Day visited them several years ago. It's a great video from a fan-crazy FCS town. And yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, that's one of the things I do appreciate about College Game Day is, there are some weeks in college football, guys, where we don't have that blockbuster game, that one game that really sticks out, like your number 1 Alabama, number 3 LSU, or, a big-time, and I know he's what you're talking about there, but, there have been times they've visited FCS teams, their campuses, and I think that's pretty great to get that exposure for those schools because we don't really think about them much. I personally do watch the FCS playoffs. I enjoy watching that, and sometimes they do begin the season before FBS season starts. I do watch a couple of those on ESPN, but I don't follow it as closely. But I know they've gone to North Dakota State a couple of times. I think they've been to James Madison. Maybe they go to Harvard, Yale, maybe at one point. So I think that is great if there is no blockbuster game in the FBS. I think there have been times that they've gone to an FCS school, and I'm like, you probably should have gone here, but I don't always agree to where Game Day chooses to go. But, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's awesome that you live in New York State. That's great that we're branching out that far, all the way in New York. That's great. Glad to have you, and glad to see that you're branching out as well to the FCS school. John Hopkins, good to see you. It doesn't matter if you're late. We're just glad that you were able to join us. That's all that matters. And Ryan, I'm sorry. It's the first time I've ever spelled that. I've seen that spelled like that, so I apologize for mispronouncing it. But yeah, absolutely. Always happy to answer your questions. Won't mispronounce that again. Hope you come back to join us at some point. No, who's my favorite broadcast team in college football? I would tell you that it used to be Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson. I loved the SEC CBS games at 2:30. That was the A-team for me. I love that. That was a lot of fun. Vern Lundquist had a heck of a voice, was a heck of a commentator year in and year out, and not just in football. I mean, he did basketball as well, and that was a lot of fun as well. I am a huge fan. I can't remember his partner, who he sides with, but I do love Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson, I will tell you, is one of the most passionate commentators I have ever listened to in my life, and I think that is phenomenal. You have so many commentators, and I'm not saying all of them, but you have a lot of commentators now that are sometimes so monotone or try to keep their emotions inside when they and Joel Klatt. Okay, so thank you. When they do this, when they commentate and they look, let some emotion out, get some screams in, get some excitement. I mean, that was one thing I love about Gus Johnson. He is not afraid to let his emotions go, to scream, to yell, to get excited, show some excitement, and I love it. So I'm a huge fan of Gus Johnson. I loved Joe Tessitore back when he was doing that. Now, of course, he has moved on to what was it now? Monday Night Football. So I love Joe Tessitore when he was doing that. I like Todd Blackledge, and I think he does a phenomenal job for the most part. I know he's not the color. I mean, he's the color commentator. He's not the play-by-play, but. Yeah, I think they all do a good job. I'm not a huge fan, personally, I will say. I'm not a huge fan of Brad Nessler. Got a good voice. Not a huge fan of his commentating. Never have been, personally. And part of that grew up. I played all those NCAA football video games. I don't know about you guys, but I still, on occasion, do play my NCAA football 14 on my PlayStation 3. I know we've got PS4 and Xbox now, but not a huge fan of Brad Nessler. Of course, he took over for Vern. Wasn't thrilled with that. But he does have a great voice, good commentating voice. Chris Fowler, yeah, he's got a good voice. Reese Davis, absolutely has got Chris Fowler, very good. Reese Davis, also phenomenal. Also not a very big fan of Kirk Herbstreit, myself. Brad and Kirk Herbstreit, kind of a no-go for me. You know, and it's not like I hate them as people, per se. It's just I just am not been a big fan of them. Kirk for me, is extremely biased, personally. I think he's a very, very biased commentator. I think it's all Ohio State, and I get that that's your alma mater. That is who he played for, who he will support. I think his son just signed with Clemson. That was kind of a shock. And good for him. I mean, he supported his son to go there, play under Dabo Swinney. But I just never been a huge fan of Kirk Herbstreit, and not just his commentating, but just his analyst. Period. His analysis is to me is trash. I just hate it. And Mark Dudley making a good point. Desmond is all Michigan, and I like how they have, both of them on College Game Day. That's a lot of fun to watch. You got Ohio State, get big all Ohio State, all Michigan. But I've just never been a huge fan of Kirk Herbstreit. I don't think he does a great job. That's just my opinion. But he's a big name. He is one of the big-time faces of College Game Day. So, yeah, Nona saying that Desmond would pick Michigan to beat the Patriots. Probably so. Yeah, he is diehard. And look, nothing wrong for being very prideful in your school, for having passion in your school and hoping for the best, but got to be realistic and understand that. Emperor of Rome hated Vern Lundquist. Hated Vern Lundquist. Why is that? I love Vern Lundquist, man. He was awesome. He was awesome. He's one of the all-time greatest broadcasters, I think, for football. I mean, there were times that he was. I talked about people having excitement, that he was kind of monotone, didn't get as excited as I think he should have. And I think Vern also had a little. I think every commentator personally has a little bit of biasness in them. I do think that, whether it's because they went to a certain school or maybe they don't like a certain team. I do think there are a handful of people that do have just a little bit of biasness in them. And so, who was it a couple years ago? I can't even remember the commentator. It was Brent Musburger. That's who it was. Brent Musburger, who I did enjoy him, but he made a comment, about it was Joe Mixon, I believe, in Oklahoma, and got a lot of backlash for that. Coach Joe Mixon dealing with a scandal during his time with the Sooners, and that was during the Sugar Bowl, I think, when they faced Auburn. Received a lot of backlash for that. Some things that they shouldn't. Sometimes commentators shouldn't say. Keep it to themselves. Try not to show any biasness. That's what we try to do here as well. Showing no bias towards any team, towards any player. Trying to keep it just fair. We offer our opinions, and that's kind of what Musburger was doing. I didn't just hate the guy for that. He was offering his opinion, his thoughts. What Joe Mixon did was wrong. Absolutely. I'm not even going to condone that, but I think there's some things that commentators do wrong. But that's just me. Border Bob, nice to see you. Herbstreit looks stupid pushing Georgia over Notre Dame this year. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, Georgia had 2 losses this season. LSU of course, and then Alabama in the SEC title game didn't deserve to be over an undefeated Notre Dame. Strength of schedule, maybe, but you do have 2 losses, and that just wasn't going to cut it. Comment 245 saying he agrees with me, doesn't like Kirk Herbstreit, but just doesn't like ESPN in general. And there are times that I've had people comment that saying that they don't like ESPN, and that's just I've never really had a huge issue with them, but I know some people don't like them. And maybe it's because they're biased, maybe because they spend too much time focusing on a specific topic. I know a lot of people get upset when you have them focusing on just all LeBron James, all Zion Williamson. If there's a big topic going on, that's all they focus on in some people's eyes. And I get that, but that's what they believe people want to see. It's all comes down to a viewership and a rating standpoint. Comment 245, ESPN has no respect for some teams and annoys me to the core. And I have noticed that at some points. Absolutely. Once again, as I mentioned, though, I think there is some biasness for everybody. Major stations, commentators, there's a little bit of bias. Referees even, I think there's some biases in there. So doesn't mean it's right, but I do think it's there. And I think we would all be guilty of that. Eli Arbeza, if the Mormons at BYU were to go undefeated as an independent, would their schedule be good enough to make the college football playoff? And I would say no. It would not be. And the reason being is BYU does play some tough school. Like this year they played, Arizona, Washington, Wisconsin, Utah. They do have a handful of games in there that were against solid opponents. Beat Wisconsin, fell to Washington. I think beat Arizona as well. But, the problem is, besides those handful of games, they mostly play some Mountain West opponents. I think they play Northern Illinois. They play some Mountain West opponents. So, in those Power 5 schools they were playing weren't necessarily the best. I mean, Washington was good. Wisconsin was very, very good. And to go on the road and do that, it was even better. But I don't think, no. I think they go undefeated is not good enough. Now, they would be very highly ranked, but the rest of their schedule, 4 or 5 games that you win don't justify you jumping into, college football playoff contention. You've got to go undefeated, beating a very tough strength of schedule that helps bolster your resume. Not good enough. They would go to a New Year's Six bowl game, I would think, but not good enough to be top 4. Notre Dame, they criticize their schedule, but Notre Dame mostly plays Power 5 schools all the way across the board. And they're mostly playing teams out of the ACC. But they got Michigan this year. They got Georgia. So I just don't think it would happen. Mike Myrick, go Noles. Always good to see you. Border Bob as well, as we mentioned. Emperor of Rome, the sports personalities that I hate the most are Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd. Or Cowherd, as some people say. Colin, for sure, receives a lot of hate, and rightfully so. There have been times I've listened to him or watched him, and he's extremely biased, trying to make people look bad. Sometimes doesn't even know what the heck he's talking about. I would say the same sometimes for Stephen A. Smith. Doesn't know what the heck he's talking about sometimes. He just sits there and rants, and people like that. People like to sit down and listen to that, and it's not right. We've seen multiple mistakes this season out of Stephen A. Smith that you're just thinking, how are you still on TV? Like, what are you saying? Skip Bayless, here's the thing. One thing that I've grown to learn and realizing, Skip does Undisputed, Skip and Shannon. And I would like to think that, Skip has made multiple mistakes. Very, very bold man. I enjoy watching him. I think it's funny. I don't know if y'all have seen the video of Skip arguing himself. They've pulled clips of him arguing against himself, and it's hilarious because he's contradicting himself, and it's enjoyable to watch. But I do think that when, it wouldn't be a good show. Any show wouldn't be good if you sat there and agreed the whole time. If you had a debate show like that or First Take or something like that, and you had guys saying, yeah, I agree with that, I mean, you wouldn't have anything to talk about. So you've got to have a dispute. And, so maybe Skip doesn't always mean what he says. Maybe Shannon doesn't always say mean what he says. But you've got to have some dispute there, some disagreement there to have a good show. I'm not saying that's the case all the time. But like I said, it wouldn't be a fun show, and you can't make an hour-long show or a 30-minute-long show if you're sitting there agreeing on everything. And you got to be bold, you got to be hot with your takes. But yeah, I can see that. Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd, especially Colin by far. Very frustrating to listen to sometimes. Mike Myrick, Skip is my guy, and I will say I have enjoyed listening to Skip on occasion. I really do. Nona asking who's on the hot seat. We discussed that on one of our last live streams, and I think I made a list of that to add to a list of videos that we'll be having coming out soon of coaches that I think could be on the hot seat, coaches that I think have maybe gotten themselves off the hot seat. We addressed a couple of that. I won't dive into that again right now. One coach I mentioned was I thought that got himself off was Derek Mason. Thought he did a good job getting himself off of that just briefly. He's got to get Vanderbilt back to at least 5 wins. Probably should get him back to a bowl game, though, just to keep his butt safe for now. But I think Gus Malzahn's on the hot seat. Despite him signing a new contract recently, I think he is off. I think Auburn had high hopes last year to compete for the SEC West title and potentially the college football playoff again, and they tanked. So if they start off the season on a wrong note, which they have a tough game against Oregon to kick things off. Of course, the SEC West, extremely tough. Got Georgia across division. It's not going to be another easy year for Auburn, and if Gus Malzahn gets Auburn to just 6 or 7 wins again, he might be on his way out. And I think Auburn made a mistake signing him to such a long contract. That was not a good idea. Eli Arbeza, Rutgers needs to fire Chris Ash. Comic Dude 45 probably has some insight on that. And Nona Bees does it piss me off when healthy players sit their bowl games? Oh yeah, we've talked about that many times. When we did our bowl predictions, we sat down and talked about that a lot. And I understand where they come from when they choose to sit out, but it does frustrate me more than anything. We see players do that though across the board. We see that in football with that. We see that in basketball. There have been people that are saying, Zion Williamson battling an injury have been saying that he should just sit out the rest of the year because they know he's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. Well, no, that's wrong. You made a commitment to play for your school. I don't care if you made a commitment to play for 1 year, which most of these basketball players do. And in football, of course, you can't go pro after a year. You have to stay for at least 2. But you made a commitment to play. And so, congratulations. You're going to be a first-round draft pick. Or maybe the number 1 overall pick, whatever. That's great. I'm happy for you. You're going to make a bunch of money. Some of your teammates aren't. Your fans aren't. Your coaches aren't. They're making a lot of money, sure, but they're also trying to get wins. So you go to a New Year's Six bowl game, which is a pretty big deal, especially if your school doesn't go there very often. And you choose, especially if you're a big-time player like a quarterback or a big-time like linebacker, defensive end. If you are a leader of a team or a big-time playmaker, and you choose to sit out of a big game like that, it frustrates the hell out of me. Absolutely. I understand why they do it. Because if they were to get hurt in that game, then they would lose potential money. They would lose, their draft stock would go down. It could cause a career-ending injury. It could cause them to lose millions of dollars. I understand that. But from a fan standpoint and from looking at it from the objective of the word team, you should not do it. So yes, it does make me very angry when players do that. The bowl games aren't meaningless. It means a lot to those programs, to those universities, to those players, especially when a team maybe hasn't been to a bowl game in a while, has gone on a bowl losing streak. It's very rare for them to make such a high-level bowl game. That it's not right. And sometimes you see players that choose to play in those bowl games because of that. Like I look at a team like Kentucky, who had such a phenomenal year. If I was on that Kentucky team, I wouldn't have sat out that game. They win 10 games. Get to the Citrus Bowl, beat Penn State. I wouldn't have sat out that game. That's a big-time bowl game for Kentucky. If you're a group of 5 school and you make a New Year's Six bowl game, you're certainly not going to sit out that game. So I would never choose to do that. Mitch Thayer, Mitchie 3, glad to see you were able to join us. You're catching us right at the end, man. We're about to shut it down here in a few minutes, but glad you were able to join us here for a little bit. Comic Dude 45 saying Chris Ash at Rutgers should have been fired this season. We just couldn't pay his buyout. And that's a very difficult thing to deal with head coaches in college football, is having to figure out how to get rid of that buyout. Sometimes you have to suffer and endure a coach for a little while because of that. And it's a very frustrating thing. Nona, good seeing you. Let's watch the comments next time. We had a couple good questions from you, so appreciate that. Hope to see you again on Tuesday if we can keep it clean. Emperor of Rome. We'll make this our last question here for the night. I have a friend who vehemently believes that Louisville should get an NBA team, and my thoughts on that. So we'll close it out kind of where we began on the basketball topic. Look, I wouldn't go as far as to say Louisville should get an NBA team. No, I mean, NBA teams, how many teams they have right now? 30? Isn't that right? They got 30 teams? I think that's about right. So, and around that area, you're looking at Kentucky. DM, appreciate it. Another great show. Glad you were able to join us. Great questions. Stay safe up there in New York. I think it's awesome that you've joined us all the way down here. But no, I don't think Louisville should get an NBA team. I don't think we've talked about this with like NFL teams in terms of whether or not they're going to expand, and I don't think it's a good idea because if you expand by one team, you've got to expand by more than that because you're looking at the divisions are even, the West is even, the East is even. You add one more team to the mix, and you got to find another team to replace that. And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Louisville, it's a big city, not necessarily a prime place, I think, for an NBA team. I think it needs to stay the way it is. I think one place but if you want to make a case for that, you could put a team in Louisville, and then if you did that and need to find another team to add, put one back in Seattle. That's what I would like to see. Bring the Supersonics back. That's what you should do. But no, I don't think Louisville is a prime place for an NBA team. But great question. Tell your friend that the Gridiron Expert says probably doesn't think it's a good idea. Sorry to hear that, but Louisville, basketball city for sure, but just not. I don't think it's a good place for NBA team. So unfortunately, so John Hopkins, good seeing you. Drew M. Posey 123. When are we starting our season predictions? Had a couple questions about that. That will be coming in summer. June, for sure, we will put out an official date for that in the next month or so. So make sure you stay tuned on Twitter at Gridiron Expert and here on YouTube as well. We will be posting our official date and a hype video for that as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. You guys, thank you for joining us tonight on this Sunday live stream. I once again apologize for not getting the Twitter alert out there for you guys. It was like spur of the moment thing, as we said. Just got done traveling, wanted to jump on for a little bit. And sorry for cutting it short. We will see you guys again on Tuesday. So, yeah, Comic 245, go catch Captain Marvel. Just saw it today, was phenomenal. So make sure you go watch that. Let me know what you think about it on Tuesday night. Thank you guys for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe.